First of all, thank you for your engagement and lots of questions, lots of them, and really appreciate that. They really help to prepare presentation for today to make it more applicable for your use case. So if you don't find an answer to your specific question, feel free to post it in Q&A. Also, I would ask to post more general questions because I saw there are lots of industry-specific questions. For example, how can we pick metrics for edtech or for subscription business or for games industry? The purpose of this lecture is to help you find answers by showing examples, explaining concepts, and maybe answering some more questions to come up. But for anything specific or whatever interests you, feel free to post in this amazing Q&A feature. Shall we start? I tried now to share a screen, to share a presentation for the whole screen. Can you see it?
Yes, it's okay.
And let me set up another window so I could also see you. Okay, like this. Nice. Cool. So I would really like to know about you more and where you're from. We'll have a small break for that. But while I'm here, I'm really keen to share my experience in product analytics with you to help you find out some stuff or apply that in your workflow. I'm currently a Senior Product Analyst at Wise, and I work in global receive product. We help businesses and personal customers from the whole world to receive better in more convenient ways. For 2.5 years, I've been teaching product analytics at Laba Business School with around 300 students completing my courses. I'm also analytics advisor at Flyer One Ventures due to invitation from which we are making this lecture today. So thank you guys so much for inviting me. What's on the agenda? First, we'll talk how to build product analytics system. Then what metrics to track, what metrics to measure. We'll mention North Star metrics and how to pick best North Star covering your use case. And also about finding data insights. And then I put data in the brackets, how to find product insights without hiring an analyst, because finding data insights, it's quite specific. But we'll talk how to find insights, and I'll tell you a few ways to find these interesting things without actually hiring a data-related person. So I put some of your questions into this presentation. Hope the answers will be satisfactory enough, but let's see how it goes. First question, which quite applies to the topic of product analytics system is whether the analytics is needed before a product market fit is confirmed for a startup. I tried to research what product market fit is. I don't remember the definition by heart, but it says that customer product market fit is achieved when a customer is willing to pay for the product, when costs of acquiring those customers are less than what they are paying, so a product achieves profitability on this market, and when the market is big enough to support the whole business function and grow it further. Two of these definitions mention the word pay, and answering the question on whether product analytics is needed, whether product market fit is achieved, I would say the following. So if the payment takes place inside of the product, the basic analytics can help you improve sales funnel. For example, on the right, we see a subscription screen, which customers see either when joining a product or when completing onboarding. So improving and analyzing how customers get to this subscription screen, behave on it, and iterating with A/B tests or maybe just with launches on improving this subscription screen can help you actually increase your LTV and like increase your RPU and monetization related metrics. But how, for instance, even before achieving product market fit, if your payment related activities are hidden inside of the product, how do we add these things? So we know in any kind of the product, it can be website, it can be mobile application, users do their actions. So we can add tracking to those actions whenever a user clicks something, clicks continue, for example, or clicks exit the screen. We can log any action and then build a conversion funnel. Where to build that, I'll cover a little bit later, but this basic tracking independently of the tool can help you analyze how many users actually get to the purchase, in case your purchase is located in the product. If it's outside of the product, for example, we know situations when your payment takes place on the web funnel and only after these customers get inside the product, then it makes sense add analytics covering this web screen, not like in product one. But if you feel like this basic tracking, it's also like product analytics can help you analyze that sales funnel. Please feel free to add. And where to store this? This is a good question. So we say, let's add tracking to track user activities. So which tool is the best for analytics? Maybe any suggestions? Let's make it more interactive. We have our Q&A, but also we have our chat. If you can post in chat which analytics tool do you think is the best for product analytics, would be really interesting to see the distribution of answers. Google Analytics, front and back end, Tableau. Interesting. Anything else? Amplitude. It depends, Firebase, Amplitude. Looks like we need to integrate all the tools. Looker Studio. Nice. Hotjar. Cool, cool, cool.
Also, there's AppsFlyer there, an answer.
Sorry?
Also, there's AppsFlyer as an answer.
AppsFlyer, perfect, yes. Hotjar. Interesting. Cool, thank you. So it seems like
I'm sorry, but one point I don't understand. Maybe I'm not sure, but I think that it's just some recent point about some point when we try to track our data and some special tools for create a database because Looker Studio it's just a tool for visualization our data, and we must to create some source for it. For example, you create some points and actions in your website and front end, for example, and you I don't know, you think you link to this data on your BigQuery for create database and use Looker Studio for visualization.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. It literally answers the next slide. So yeah, I think you are not wrong. You got everything right. So where to add this tracking? As you've said, we can, if we aggregate all the tools you mentioned here, and thank you thanks everyone who posted their answer. We can split or group all the tools into two types. So first type is our external data services, the ones that log front-end behavior. Hotjar, I guess, is also related here. Amplitude, Mixpanel, Google Analytics. So the beauty of these external data services, usually I will tell you a bit more what sort of data is logged there, but these external data services, they store data on how our users complete certain funnels, click buttons, and usually data on their customer journey, and they store it to their storage. And there is our internal database as an alternative solution. We can store all events to our storage, like cloud storage. And from these big data tables, maybe you have seen like this big data tables with hundreds of columns, using queries, SQL queries, whatever sort of query you prefer, process and extract data. And then the result is visualized in Tableau, Looker, and any sort of BI instrument you could direct this data to. And for instance, when you store data to external services, when you connect external services to your product, usually the visual part happens there. So you don't have to pay for Tableau, you don't have to pay for Looker. But when we store it to our internal database, as you know, after we write SQL query, there is no chance to add the chart. So we need to extract results of our queries and put them on the chart. Here are examples of BI tools where you can visualize outputs of that stored data. This is interesting, but when do we use actually these two things? So when we are talking about analytics system, it really depends on the stage of a company. But for example, what I observed, at least from my practice, when companies are kind of small, have launched, achieved their positive margins with unit economics, and are interested in product analytics, they connect external data services to understand how their users are using the product. And connecting these services is pretty easy, at least from what I know, both Mixpanel and Amplitude, because I worked a lot with them. They give APIs to engineers, so you just need to add the event name or like the name of each step to the code, and then it logs and fires in these external systems. So what sort of data is tracked here? Usually it's our funnels. On the example before, let me come back. Here you saw a typical funnel in Mixpanel when we can put onboarding event, then activation event, then purchase event, and see how many users complete each step and how many users drop off. This is basic sort of analytics we can get from external tools. Also, in these tools, we can track how many users click a certain button, click cross on a certain screen, or how they navigate around the product in general. Very interesting. However, when it comes to, not all button clicks, for example, if I click 200 times on a button, Mixpanel and these services will store all 200 times. But this is not something we would like to keep in our database, because button clicks usually are never logged to our database. But when do we want to log things to our database? First of all, at WISE, there is this definition of critical and non-critical business data. So critical business data is usually stored in databases. What I mean by critical is when a user registered, when they made a transaction, personal data, how many of those transactions were successful, how many of, and this doesn't only apply to fintech. When we talk about, for example, the core, the essence of your app is fitness trainings with trainers. So you are interested how many of those who started the training session successfully finished it. This is the core action, and it can be critical for your business. So it would make sense, along with purchases in this app, business registrations, log the success rate of your core actions. Because what happens when you log the data to your data tables and to your storage, you log it with 100% accuracy. However, Mixpanel and Amplitude are front-end tools. So if I don't allow the cookies, I will not be tracked as a user in Mixpanel. And usually, these tools miss out 30% of customers, because 30% of customers do not allow cookies. This is the average statistics. So this is 100% accuracy, and this side is approximate funnels, which can still help you make decisions. Yeah, but then it comes to making changes to your buttons, changing the color of the buttons. And you want to connect these behavioral funnels with transactions. And you have a question, like, but within this group of customers who clicked pink button, for example, how many of them transacted in the next day? And the point, because external data services, it's not only limited to these two, but these services, they track approximate number of users. They are good to understand general conversion. You can actually join data from both sources, from this side on transactions and from this side on behavior, like what did these users do, what buttons they clicked. You can join these two pieces of data by user ID. So when a user registers, maybe you know already, and I don't have to explain, but when a user is registered in your app, usually when registration is successful, you assign a user their ID, and each user has got a unique ID. So it's good to log this ID in Mixpanel as well, or like in these services as well at a user level. So you could download users who clicked a pink button, download users who transacted, and then see how many of those who clicked this button transacted, and do this cross monetization and behavioral match. It works usually. So some caveats when we talk about analytics system. When we talk about how to set up external data services, as I said, they usually provide APIs, so they are easier to set up. They charge for a number of events because they store all user data to their database. If we have 1,000 users, it's gonna be a cheaper plan for us. If we have 10 million users, they're gonna say us, guys, it's time to upgrade your plan and pay us more. And the point of these external data services, as I've said, they are good to build customer journeys and event-based funnels. So how many users of those, from those who clicked on, I don't know, start meditation, how many of those continued, and how many of those completed meditation successfully. This is one event, second, and third. And these tools, they are event-centric, which means when you want to cluster users or calculate correlation at a user level, or do RFM analysis showing your most profitable users, external data services are pretty poor about it because they are all about events. But what can allow you to do analysis at a user level is internal services. So here you store all information based on IDs, and one of the dimensions is a user ID. So for every user, you can see, for example, how much they transacted, how much money, how many payments they made, what core actions, if you store them to your internal database, they did. This is user-centric, so usually storing data to internal database, it allows you to do expanded analysis based on user level. However, this is good to start to understand how your product is used in general. And I would say when it comes to storing data to internal database, either you have to learn SQL or you have to hire an analyst who knows SQL to make use of this data. Yeah, this is the part about analytics system. Maybe we could answer like few questions part by part, like 5 minutes for the questions and then continue with the second part. Would you like that?
Actually, we don't have questions for now written in Q&A or in the chat, but we have a raised hand from Anton.
And there is one more comment. Sorry, I muted myself. There is one hand raised. Maybe you want to speak out?
Yes, I have one question about this chapter. And could you tell us about some equality and high performance services for creating a database without our website? For example, it's super large tools for creating database we have in BigQuery, but maybe some examples for useful case and tools, other some tools for this.
So I know like Snowflake is quite efficient. So like it's a tool for, it's an interface to query the data from the tables and to store data into the cloud. It's quite efficient. If you see some constraints with BigQuery, Snowflake is usually used by a lot of companies and a lot of, companies by their sides, by different size, and they try to work on their performance as well. I also know Amazon Redshift. This is also good enough. Azure haven't used, to be honest. But yeah, these two work quite well. And yeah, they are not that much expensive. So when it comes to using this, let's change the picture a bit. When it comes to using these internal services to store the data and query the data from the services, the main thing is a processing time. So if your queries, SQL queries take like days to load, it will cost you a lot. So the thing there is actually storage doesn't take that much money. It's your processing time. Just use any tool, but make sure the queries are short and efficient, not to overpay for them.
Thank you. Maybe Alexandra to send us some range and top 5 of these services. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Nice. I think adoption of Q&A tool is quite low, but maybe maybe till the end of session we will have some more questions. Shall we move on with metrics then?
Yep.
Cool. So honestly, lots of questions about metrics. What metric is the best for what industry? What metrics should we track? And my short answer will be there is no recipe for one recipe for all companies, but there is quite a lot of guidance. And in this presentation, I tried to add examples to help your industries find maybe something you would like to track as well. So what's the most important metric we should track? definition of most important metrics sometimes is used along with North Star metric. And when it comes to what should be our North Star, it's a very interesting question. There are 3 pieces of advice on it, maybe more, but I found these 3, and I trust these 3. So the most important metric for your product should be revenue leading. So you know if customers do this thing more, or like if this metric is increasing, your revenue will be increasing as well. So there is a strong correlation between these 2 indicators, and causation as well. This metric should demonstrate how well you capture value and how well you deliver value to the customer. I will tell more examples about this because I know it sounds misleading, but as an example here, jumping a little bit forward, you know, in Airbnb, as a marketplace, the main value for a seller and for a buyer is when there is a booking. Because as a buyer, I realized Airbnb is such a nice place to make a booking, and as a seller, I realized Airbnb is such a nice place to place the booking. For example, the way Airbnb captures value delivered to their customer is measuring number of bookings per customer per week, as far as I remember. And this North Star, you should be able to measure it 100% accurately. So coming back to our analytical system, it should not be measured in external data services. They are good, but based from my experience, they are not about accuracy. This metric should be quantifiable for all your customers, and you should be able to measure it every period of time you want to report this metric. For example, when we talk about revenue as a North Star, it's such a good North Star, and many PMs believe it's the best North Star because it's direct indication of growth. However, there are some sources that do not recommend setting North Star as a metric. And for example, if your revenue decreases due to seasonality, does that mean that your product got worse? Not necessarily. Or, for example, if there are interest rate fluctuations in the market, does that mean that investors should flee your product just because your revenue dipped a little bit? Or fraud waves. Especially in fintech, it happens, but also if you have a product and you have chargebacks, you have refunds of your subscriptions, you might also be familiar with what fraud waves mean. So if there are fraudsters who decided to attack your product and then take their money back, does that mean that your product is bad? No. So in these examples, revenue might not be a good North Star metric because it can fluctuate due to external factors. On the other side, when we are talking about what is the best metric to track, there are some pieces of advice to set a quality growth metric, something that could describe value of your product to your customer. And this is quite industry specific. So when it comes, what's the best metric for your particular product in your particular industry, this could give some sort of examples. When we talk about social networks, they track number of users engaged, which is daily active users and monthly active users. Because there is this book, I will tell you more about it, but they say in Facebook, derivative currency for those who post ads, so this is main source of revenue for Facebook, is customer attention. So the more active customers Facebook will have, the more attention they will pay to the seller's advertising. Therefore, North Stars of Facebook and LinkedIn are a number of customers active, engaged. For content platforms such as Netflix and Spotify, this is the depth of user engagement, which means time, the general time the content was listened to. For example, for Spotify, it's hours their songs were listened. For Netflix, it's hours content watched. So this is deep customer interaction with the product, because they know the more content will be watched, the more revenue they will get. But this is the core thing, demonstrating customer and depth of you, not only number of customers engaged, but also how much they are engaged. This is most valuable thing for them. Also, I put here a Starbucks logo. I didn't Google for Starbucks North Star, but they proved that the more time customers spent in their shops, the more money they brought. So this gave a push to transform their strategy to make their coffee shops not only be a simple coffee shops, but also have everything there, like toys for children, sandwiches, I don't know, some stuff to buy, decorative cups, wherever. So they try to increase time spent in their product as well. And for platform-based products, here we can take an example of Uber, Amazon, and Airbnb. And maybe you have marketplace or platform-based product as well. This is frequency of user engagement, which demonstrates value both to person who sells item and to person who buys this item. For example, for Uber, it's number of rides per week. For Amazon, it's number of purchases per month. For Airbnb, it's number of nights booked, as I've already said. This can be a nice substitute of boring revenue metric. It should be tied to revenue metric, but it also demonstrates the customer value, which customer is getting from your product. So, okay, let's take, we are a platform that publishes content for people 16 to 18 years old, maybe some special sort of content. And we know, like, if it's a content-based platform, maybe we can measure depth of user engagement as a North Star metric. But then there is a question, should it be only one North Star metric or several metrics? It's a really good question. But I shamelessly was taking photos of this book I read, which is Scaling Lean. Maybe you heard about it, Mastering Key Metrics for Startup Growth. To my mind, book is a bit watery, but there is something to take out of it, which I put on this slide. So in this book, it said that with multiple key metrics, you can achieve a better focus as a team, but you risk losing focus as a company. When every team focuses on something different, your general company strategy might not be followed and prioritized by this team. And for the virtual reality and social company called IMVU, they noticed when one team transformed into many different teams, they started having multiple different metrics. Like each team literally had their own North Star. And as a company, they suffered revenue dip. But then they came together and focused around one goal of increasing some throughput or like some core metric, which helped them grow as a company and ultimately grow their profitability, like their turnover, literally. However, we say on the other side, if we have one company or one team in our startup, like a startup can be small and there is one team, why should we have different metrics? Usually there is one metric. But then, for example, of Wise, this is an open source data. They started with 3 teams, and then in 2021, it was 70 plus teams. Focus of each team is very different, is quite different. For example, we have send, spend, receive, invest teams. How can you all focus around one metric? So it's good to have one North Star as a company, But then you can break down this North Star by drivers. And every team can focus on a separate driver. We will see later in examples how, how it works. 1 second. So the idea, when you take North Star metric, for example, depth of user engagement for our content for people between 16 and 18, you can break it down by input metrics and make each team responsible for a separate driver to drive your North Star together as a company. Example from Spotify. They have, as I've already said, their North Star is the depth of customer engagement, which is time spent listening to music. Amazing. However, they break down what contributes to this metric. This is number of users that listen multiplied by time they spend on the platform. And to increase number of users, you can bring back more users. So it's new users plus resurrected plus returning. So you can implement features that help to bring customers back to your product. And on the other side, you can focus on increasing ways to interact with your product for these customers who come back. And these are like two different strategies, but Spotify breaks it down by these dimensions. So every team can focus on a separate metric to drive time spent listening to music. And you know how it all ties together in one picture, because it all contributes to this metric. Another product. There was a question about metrics for ed tech, educational technologies. And this is an example from Duolingo. I strongly recommend you to check the article, How Duolingo Builds Product, if you're interested in ed tech. They don't speak loudly about their North Star metric, but what we know about them, at least from their organizational structure, is that they have 3 departments, or at least they say so. First department, and like these 2 departments are clearly focused on learners. So I assume their North Star is number of amount of time spent per learning to learn. Same like hours listened to music, hours spent to learn per user, for example. So, and for this like learning North Star, they even structured their organization. So there is a team which is responsible for time spent learning. There is a team responsible for retaining customers, learners, and there is a team responsible for connections. I don't remember what is connections. But there is a separate department responsible for new areas of learning, which contributes to this North Star metric. And there is a separate department responsible for analyzing how this learning converts into money, and how do we balance between product features, money earned, and improve and make money without deteriorating experience for our learners, which makes complete sense. So this is one of the ways, one of the examples, the whole organization is focused around learners and delivering and capturing value from them ultimately. There is a third part on how to find insights, but maybe you have some questions.
You can, if we cannot adopt this new feature of Q&A in Meets, you can just write them in
Yes.
our comment chat.
Yes, you can just post them in the chat, because I thought there will be hundreds of questions, so maybe let's do Q&A. But just feel free to post them in the chat. Maybe you have some question about metrics still. We have time to answer.
There were some interesting questions in the registrations our like forms, is there like different metrics or some rules for metrics depending on the stage of the startup? Like you said about the team structure and how it can evolve, but maybe before product market fit and on the market product market fit, there is something different. I don't know.
Yeah, so depending on the startup, depending on the stage of a startup, I would say the primary focus is to make your unit economics positive. And if there are any product-related metrics, this would be related to conversion to purchase on your sales screen, repeated purchase, RPU, RPPU per user. This is mainly like monetization metrics. And then if this purchase is after onboarding or if it's in product, you are interested how many customers complete this onboarding registration to get to your screen, because you want 100% customers to see this purchase screen and 100% of them to purchase, which would help your unit economics, right? But once you achieve that unit economics, now you're interested, oh, okay, they bought. How do we maximize revenue from them? And how do we, because you cannot be on some market endlessly, you start to be interested more in retention. So to grow your customer base and to make sure customers actually stay and use your product. And this, like, I would say there is a smooth transition. When you achieve your unit economics, you start focusing more on activation and retention to make sure customers do not charge back their money. They stay in the product and they are actually customers in your product. I would say the transition happens like this. And then you see, oh, but to have more customers, we actually can focus on retention, on marketing, or on referrals. And for us, for example, referrals work the best. So additional metrics start to appear on top of this once you grow as a mature company. And you start paying attention to customer satisfaction, happiness, referral, and stuff. But I would say the structure could be like this.
Thank you so much. And we have 2 more questions while we're talking to each other.
Startup should analytics during prototype step or during MVP state? I would say during MVP state. On the prototype state, you're just testing it with users, so you can see what users, and there are not that many users to measure. You can see where users click and what they do. But when you want to launch your product and you are interested in how customers behave before they do that purchase, or like general in behavioral metrics, add them to the first iteration you plan to launch. That could be useful, but not mandatory. What are usual metrics for B2B startups, and are there some differences between B2B and B2C? I would say it really depends on the industry. Maybe if you could mention the industry, that could help a lot. Restaurants. Again, depends on the, like, if you're startup to book, to make, like, depends what you do in these restaurants. If you want to provide customers this ability to book seats or pre-order food, it would be how many bookings per customer were made, how many customers made a booking, and what is the frequency of customer engagement once they made at least one booking, right? Really depends what your startup does. Customer analytics for restaurants. So if you're selling this service to restaurants and customer analytics, I would say the restaurant gets a value from your product when you provide insights. So I would measure how many insights were implemented out of those you provided. Otherwise, yeah, this is the biggest value you can deliver to the restaurants. But that's a very good question.
And also we have a raised hand, and I think after this we can move forward.
Move on. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I can. Yeah. Could you give me a few tips about a structure of roles for other teams and structure of levels of deep analyzing? For example, I must create analysis for some different teams, like lead of departments and under team, under leads, and for example, duty and etc. And for some separating team of just usual employees. And I have a questions how to save a secure of your data. How range of this level? Maybe you have some tips for this.
So let me get whether I got your question. So you're asking, dependent on the team type in your organization, what data accesses they should have?
Yeah. What the I have a different teams, and maybe you give me tips how range roles and access to some information. When I must block access to, I don't know, maybe revenue for just usual marketers and for financials, etc. Because I think that secure of some data is main cell of our data analysis.
Okay, so two things. Okay, three things. First, your marketing data. It's usually a secret. Your customer acquisition cost per marketing campaign, it's usually quite private and is kept within marketing team. If it comes to your financial data, public companies report it globally. So it's usually your choice whether to keep this data private or not. If it comes to customer PII data, which is privacy data, for example, my name and surname, my age, my weight, what else, my email, my phone number, this information should not be accessible for a majority of employees. And only certain people are allowed to query this information, because this is customer PII. I advise you to read more about it, but personal information should not be accessible should be accessible only to specific people, and agreements have to be signed up that this information should not be declared without certain permissions. Yes, and all the rest, like behavioral data and stuff, it's fine to query it, but again, for example, we have like all analysts can access analytics data. Very few analysts can access customer private data, and you have to request a special right, like special access for this. Marketing data, nobody knows apart from marketing team and related people. Financial data, I can check it as well, but I think it depends on organization whether you want to give all accesses to it, to give everyone access to it or not.
Thank you very much. It's a good advice. Yeah.
Cool. Now let's talk about finding insights without hiring an analyst. I hope the market for hiring analysts will not shrink after this part.
Sorry,
Nice.
you're muted.
Okay, come back. So I said, let's talk how to find insights without hiring an analyst. And I said, I hope the market for hiring analysts will not shrink after this part. I clicked the wrong screen. But 3 pieces of advice. First, I think you probably heard about it, but it's practice-based, and I know it really works well if you implement it really well. So first way to find insights, product related, is to implement NPS feedback form. If you haven't done it yet, how it works, I'm a user and I installed Amazon to purchase some stuff. And after my first successful purchase, there is a form window showing up in my web browser or in my mobile phone asking how likely you're going to recommend Amazon to a friend or colleague. I can score it from 0 to 10. And optionally, I can add a feedback explaining my score. This really works. But you need to implement it like on a product level. Why it works? You can quantify customer satisfaction, and you can, first of all, like customer satisfaction and NPS score. And for those people who are dissatisfied, and this is those people who put the score between 0 and 6, you can see why they are dissatisfied with your product in their comments. Yes, you have to process these comments. Lots of solutions for that already, but you can easily group these comments into biggest pain areas and see why your customer satisfaction score is dropping. For example, majority of your problems relate to slow content speed. You see that 50% of people who are dissatisfied are mentioning that in the comments. This is a really good thing to collect insights on what could be improved about your product and prioritize the backlog better. Because, for example, it can happen one person in your organization is lobbying idea. And this one person is quite convinced about it, but you see that only 5% of NPS feedback is actually about that idea, whilst majority is about content download. Second way, churn analysis. As I've said, in your product, first thing is to achieve positive unit economics, but then you start getting interested on how customers are using your product and why 60% of our customers leave our product forever after first week. The idea is to identify these 60% of customers who leave your product forever. You can do it if you store data in your database using SQL, simple row number function. Identify customers who haven't used your product for more than 3 months after using it for a certain time. In PayPal analysis, it's explained pretty well, but the idea is to exclude deactivated accounts or one-time users and see for those customers who used your product for a certain time, how many of them went forever, and then either analyze user journeys, what happened to these customers, or send them a survey. I was doing that at Wise. That was one of my, I think, first year projects. And we thought nobody would answer to this survey, but we got so many insights asking churned customers, oh, why did you go? And the reasons could be easily classified. So when you get the answers from this like survey, or if you don't want to make a survey, you can analyze their user journeys in your tool, if you have one, or in your CS tool, where you can see account and their activity, wherever. You can understand what percentage of customers could be retained if you did fix their problem, if you did fix something they are complaining about. Or you can also, given, especially survey helps with this, you can understand what percentage of customers went to your competitors and why they went to your competitors, and like out of this, classify addressable churn and see how many of those customers you can bring back if you fix their problems, which also comes to question about impact. Third one, I added this one because I remember that whenever I share it with my students, it drives them incredibly happy. So I thought that could be something useful. But when you have external front-end tools or even internal ones, when you calculate the drop-off on your core conversion funnels, for example, we are interested how many of users who joined sign up and then activated. And you see actually that out of all who signed up, 80%, out of all who joined, 80% signed up, but from them, like around, how many? 65% activated. So the biggest drop actually happens here. And you can, out of all customers who dropped, you can group them into cohort. Again, you can do it in SQL or you can do it in external data tools. The idea is to explain the approach. So you can group all who dropped into cohort. And for this cohort, check their user journey. So what did they do after they made this event? And then you see, oh, out of all customers who did not activate, so who dropped here, after sign up, they actually saw some error, or they actually went to favorite section and then just didn't like this section and dropped you for the product forever. This is how this journey analysis happens in Amplitude. So you can, as I've said, you can save these users who dropped into cohort. You can import this cohort into segment setting here. And for this cohort, see what they did after user sign up. Because we know they did this user sign up, but then they did something else. And we are interested for them to activate. So we can see that after user sign up, actually 75%, they just ended the session and probably never came back. It's interesting why they ended the session. Did anything happen to them? Or maybe there was some additional screen they, I don't know, just, no, there wasn't any screen because they just ended the session. And from those customers who did not activate but who completed sign up, you see 24% seeing the main landing screen, some of them going to edit profile, download zone, and doing other passes. And it can help you understand what customers do after making a certain step. I make an example of Amplitude because it has this Pathfinder chart where you can easily aggregate user actions like for the whole cohort. You can also do it manually by calculating percentages and using window functions. Just makes it easier here. But this is an example of user journey analysis. Why and when it can be helpful? It can help you to learn what customers do instead of completing the target action. And if you see they are going somewhere, but you don't understand what happens to them, you can find emails or user IDs of these customers and ask what happened to them. It can help you prepare inputs for interview on why they are doing this. Because what I know from, at least what I understand from data, it can never tell you why things happen. It can just tell you that some things happen. But to understand why, it usually requires collaboration with research, doing some interviews, or reading customer feedback. And there is one last section. Actually, it stems from the question, when does it make sense to conduct correlation analysis of user actions? Separate thanks for the author of this question. This one made me think way longer time than I supposed to, but this is a really interesting one. So what do we mean by correlation analysis? Simple example. We want to check the hypothesis whether the speed of main page loading time impacts our revenue. So if a main page loads slower, do we get less money? Or if a main page loads faster, do we get more money? And Amazon actually conducted that analysis, confirming that a page slowdown of 1 second could cost them $1.6 billion in sales each year, which is also proven by Google. They made similar analysis and concluded that the slower content loads for them, the more losses they incur. Another example, does the time spent in a product impact average purchase revenue? Time spent in a product, you can remember here examples of Spotify and Netflix, but it's quite a good North Star to follow for some products. And as I told you, Starbucks found that the more time customers spent in the shop, the more they purchased, which played a key role in transforming Starbucks' strategy around its coffee shops. So when does it make sense to do this correlation analysis with user actions and our metrics? I would say, I would say it makes sense when this analysis is related mainly to correlation of variables with your North Star or its drivers. And here, drivers depend on what sort of company you are. For example, if you are marketing team driven, so you know your main source of revenue comes from marketing. The retention for your product is low, I don't know, industry standards, wherever, it's very low, and your marketing-based team, it makes sense to do correlation because you're mainly marketing driven and retention is low, there is no correlation between retention and revenue. But there is correlation between revenue and sort of marketing campaigns you are setting up. So if you're a marketing team-driven company, it makes sense to do correlation analysis with your North Star and any sort of marketing-related variables. Sales team-driven company, same here. So I would say to make sure your correlation analysis is applicable, try to define what drives your product first. Also, as I said, first of all, it makes sense when you analyze direct relationship between North Star's drivers and other variables, so you are clear about the impact. For example, once I've analyzed whether longer verification time for a client result in less money this customer transacted with our product. So this is a clear impact on business indicators, and it also helps you to make sure results of this analysis will be used. Because if you make a correlation study of verification time and, I don't know, number of leaves on my new green flower, it would not make any sense for business or any other like minor metric for business. Second, outcome should be actionable and showing causation pattern. So, for example, Google found half-second delay caused 20% decrease in repeat traffic. And that persisted, this decrease persisted even when the delay went away. So it's a direct impact on customer experience. You know, one thing is related to another, and it causes your product lots of harm. So feel free, once your impact is proven, you can test whether this change or whether this correlation makes sense when you test improvements with A/B tests or gradual rollout. For example, you see some pattern, but you are not sure if one thing causes another. You can remove one thing with A/B test if it's possible and see whether customers in variation A feel better compared to customers in variation B. This can help you test and prove causation. And third, the question on correlation analysis, it mentioned excluding number of users, but just a caveat, you cannot do correlation analysis for 3 customers. You can survey them directly, but some sources say correlation analysis makes sense when you have at least 100 users. Otherwise, you can survey them directly and see the pattern. Here, I guess we covered most of agenda and most of 1 hour planned lecture. I have a couple of follow-ups before maybe you have some more questions. So for follow-ups, first of all, thanks Flyer1 for inviting me. If you're a portfolio company or you belong to Flyer1's portfolio company as its advisor, I can support you with analytics directly. Feel free to reach to Alex. If you're not the member, you can still reach out to me in LinkedIn. I'll try to help you. Flyer1 has really cool case studies, events, webinars. Make sure you follow it on LinkedIn and subscribe to its newsletters. I have also, in case you don't belong to portfolio company or don't have one, but you want to grow as a product analyst, I have courses for that where I help people learn more about product analytics and become better analysts for a beginner level, and we'll be launching an advanced one soon. DM me in LinkedIn if you're interested. We'll be happy to help. And on that note, I guess it's thank you from my side. Maybe you have some questions from your side.
Thank you so much. It was really very interesting. Yeah, if anybody have some questions, please write them into the chat. And yeah, no? Wow, we have.
I guess this question was prepared for quite a long amount of time. Let's see. Could you talk about calculation LTV for clear comparison of the last period with the previous one? What do you use as a scale of that period? What about scoring and behavior prediction of users? Maybe a few words about main methods that you would prefer. So calculation LTV, I really need to understand the use case here. If you want, send me the screenshot with the problem, because I guess it's a bit more technical. But I will be happy to look into numbers separately and just to understand better what you mean. Next question, scoring behavior prediction of users. Few words about the main methods that you would prefer. This is really interesting one, scoring and behavior prediction. For I need to understand why you would be using this method. What is the use case? But to understand behavior of users, I used clustering them into segments based on feature adoption. So depending on what features and what combination of features this user is adopted, what is their revenue contribution? And given these behaviors, if we make certain number of users adopt this certain feature, how much this would bring us in incremental level, in incremental revenue. For example, we know that users who use meditation app, and those who listen to sounds and listen to meditations, they bring twice more revenue compared to those who listen to fairy tales and listen to sounds for all the same demographic representation. Would it make sense to make another feature more discoverable to engage our users more? This sort of analysis I've done for behaviors. That was the method. Yeah, but that was the method. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Cool.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting. I already saw a presentation like yesterday, but it was still very interesting to listen to you today. Thank you so much. And
Awesome.
yeah, and we will have a recording for that, and also I think everybody can find your LinkedIn and so on.
Cool.
Thank-
Awesome. Thank you so much for invitation and for being such a great number of people to do this lecture with. Nice, and glad to help as always. See you.
Great. Have a great evening. Bye.